In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the entire Empire Strikes Back Bounty Hunters cast. Some of these I have reviewed on the channel up until now. I have this Boba Fett, Dengar, and IG-88 on the channel now. Bossk, Zuckuss, and 4-LOM I will get to eventually. Just haven't had a chance to as of yet. But regardless, I still wanted to do a dedicated video for this entire group at some point. I've been wanting to film it for quite a while now. I think the time has come that I decided I want to do it. Because it's probably one of the most iconic scenes in the entire original trilogy. And even if you're not a dedicated Star Wars fan, I think most people generally recognize this entire group and know that, yes, that's the bounty hunters from The Empire Strikes Back. So we'll just talk a little bit about each character again, even the ones we've reviewed on the channel up until now. I consider the 6 action figures you see here the definitive versions of the respected characters. Now you might be thinking, oh, this Boba Fett, he's from the 30th anniversary line, we got a better one up until now. Well, yes, that's true. But that one is for Return of the Jedi. As of now, this is still considered the definitive Empire Strikes Back Boba Fett up until now. And Bossk and IG-88, at some point they should be put into the TVC line. Who knows when that's going to happen, but even if they do get put in the TVC line soon, these 2 action figures of them are really good. So it's going to be very hard to beat. I know some people say, oh, maybe like on Bossk they can improve his hips and maybe make him a little taller and things like that, but it's going to be very minor fixes from before, and I wouldn't be surprised if Hasbro ends up reutilizing a lot of tooling from like Bossk, for instance, to make a new one, and even IG-88 to an extent. And even if they do an entirely new IG-88, I wouldn't be surprised if they end up reutilizing a lot of the parts from IG-11 here. In fact, they may just do an exact copy of him and then just do IG-88's respective parts to add along with that. The 4-LOM you're seeing there is actually from the 30th anniversary line. I got him in 2007, and I think he was re-released as well in the Vintage Collection. He was very early on, so whenever I do that review, that'll be like a 2-in-1 basically. And as far as I know, it's the exact same action figure. I don't even think there's a paint difference of any sorts. For Zuckuss there, interesting story about him is he was originally slated to be in the TVC line. I'm trying to think. I don't think I have any of the pamphlets around. Well, anyway, one of the pamphlets for the Shadow of the Dark Side line, it features some of the early TVC action figures like the Echo Base Han Solo, for instance. And Zuckuss is included under that with the TVC banner. But then for whatever reason, he ended up being relegated to the Saga Legends line for Shadow of the Dark Side. So perhaps at some point Zuckuss was supposed to be in TVC. He kind of is if you count the early bird set where he's mistakenly labeled as 4-LOM. And of course 4-LOM is labeled as Zuckuss. But still, Zuckuss deserves his place in the TVC line at some point. And quite frankly, this action figure is perfect of him. I really can't see what Hasbro could improve upon. I guess if they gave him hinged hips, yeah, Dengar rifle was a little stuck there. But maybe if they gave him hinged hips, that could be something they can improve upon. But the thing is Zuckuss is one of those characters. I don't think he's the most mobile anyway, so it doesn't really make sense. He's kind of a protocol droid. At least I think he is a protocol droid of some sorts, or, well, actually he's a Gand, but he's kind of like 4-LOM here, where they're very robotic, I guess. There is only so much he can do, and I don't really think there's anything that Hasbro can improve upon at this point. So we'll go ahead and start here on the left-hand side. We'll start with Bossk here. We'll do a formal review of him, but I'll just kind of talk about some of the history that he's had in my collection. So I actually got him the same exact day as IG-88 back there, all the way back in 2007. He's been in my collection for, what, 17 years now at this point. Really like this action figure. At the time, he was easily one of my favorites. He still is. I know a lot of people say that Boss needs an all-new figure at this point, but quite frankly, even if Hasbro just did a straight repack of him in TVC, I would be okay with that. I think this figure's perfect. It looks like Bosk. Everything about him I think is perfect. The articulation was superb for the time. Even in 2007, it was kind of questionable if action figures would have super articulation or not. But this guy does. And even with the modern day action figures, he holds up really well. And the paint is excellent on him. It really got his reptilian look down nicely. He's got all these cracks in his skin, kind of like that, how reptiles usually do. If you don't know anything about Bosk, he's a Trandoshan, which they're kind of like a slaver race, specifically for Wookiees. And they do eat a lot of Wookiees. Very nasty creatures, but they make good bounty hunters. They do show up in Star Wars every now and then. One particular instance I'm thinking of is in the Knights of the Old Republic series. If you know that Yavin space station mission in the first game, you'll end up fighting a bunch of Trandoshans as part of like a smuggler's war or something like that. And then they do show up in Knights of the Republic 2 every now and then, and most of the time there are bounty hunters there as well. And they do show up in the Old Republic game. I know one of them can become your party member if in the Jedi Consular walkthrough at least. I totally forget what his name is right now. And I know they show up every now and then in other Star Wars games. But yeah, it's been in my collection for 17 years now. Very happy to have them. IG-88 I reviewed recently on the channel. There is one particular note I'll point out about him that I forgot to mention in the videos. The day I got him, which is the same day I got Bosk there, I actually got a second IG-88. It was either that day or within a few days for a friend, and it was for his birthday. And at the time, when he opened up the present I got him, and it was this, he told me that he was going to keep it in the package and never open it. I wonder if 17 years later he's fulfilled that. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see him very much after 2007 because he ended up switching schools at the time, and then we lost contact over the years. Yeah, I'd be interested to follow up with him and see if he still has this figure 17 years later. At the time, I was so impressed with this guy that I figured, well, you know, I really like it, and I know he kind of is into this stuff as well, so maybe he'll like it. And he seemed to at the time. I think that was the last story I forgot to really mention with this guy. And then Boba Fett here. This is the 38th anniversary one with the Fett Legacy pack that includes Mandalore the Ultimate, and then or actually it's not Mandalore the Ultimate, it's actually Mandalore the Indomitable. I after I filmed that review, I ended up referring to him as the Raw Mandalore, actually. So it was the one before Mandalore the Ultimate, but they both have the same exact look. But Mandalore the Indomitable is from Tales of the Jedi, and yeah, he's a little bit different species, but they are part of the same era. I'm sure at some point I will do a video for Mandalore again, and then I'll talk a little bit more about his correct history. But you know, there's so much Star Wars lore out there, and over the years you learn a lot and you forget a lot along the way, and sometimes you need a refresher. Sometimes before I film these action figure reviews, I end up going back and just reading a small rundown of these characters again, be like, oh yeah, I recall that, or oh, I didn't even realize that about this character. But yes, Fett Legacy Pack came with Jango Fett and Mandalore the Indomitable. And I still really like this Boba Fett. Even if Hasbro does make a new Empire Strikes Back one, I think this guy's still going to hold up. And I prefer this one over the TVC figure. I just like the lighter deco he has, and even though his small cape there is a little longer than it really should be, I still like how it's frayed at the ends, and you can tell it's seen some action. It's a very nice action figure. It's been in my collection for about 17 years now as well. I think I got him back in 2007 for Christmas, if I recall correctly. So you're 2007 or 8. So yeah, even back in the mid-2000s, I knew that I wanted the entire Empire Strikes Back Bounty Hunter cast in my collection. Dengar here was the very last one I ended up getting. And I didn't get this guy until about 2018 or 19. So it took me a little while. There are some other Dengars out there that aren't too far off from this one. There is one that came out in the comic packs, which is not too bad. I wouldn't mind owning that one at some point. But this is definitely the definitive Dengar. It's been rumored for a couple years now that he's supposed to get a re-release. I don't know if he will. I wouldn't be surprised if he would. Being figure number 1, you would think Hasbro would be like, hey, we need to go back and get the very first TVC figure in the numbering line a re-release again, especially since now he's kind of on the expensive side and he really shouldn't be. As we can tell from the Black Series Dengar, he's popular, but he's not so popular that everyone's going to be clamoring to get him usually. He's usually only popular among the OT crowd. And of course, if you're a fan of bounty hunters, which I think there's a lot more fans of like clones and stormtroopers and Mandalorians and things like that more than specific character bounty hunters. It's a nice action figure, definitely the definitive version of him. I don't think he needs to be revisited other than a straight re-release. I wouldn't even recommend Hasbro doing the photoreal face because the painted face looks excellent. Very nice. And for 4-LOM here, I've had him since 2007. I did get him brand new, and it was actually at Kmart at the time. And I think he was only $7.99, if I recall correctly. And I do have the coin in the coin album. I'll be sure to show that off at some point. I know he was pretty early on in the 30th anniversary line. I forget what number he was. Maybe in the 20s or less. So this guy is a protocol droid, and then Zuckuss is the Gand. But he kind of looks like the protocol droid because he got the similar look. I would have to go back and read about Zuckuss' history. I actually have never really done a lot of research on him. I do know 4-LOM is a protocol droid. I think he had a programming issue or something, and then he became hostile and ended up thinking on his own. and became a bounty hunter. He's a very nice figure. Quite frankly, if Hasbro ever did a new one, I don't think there's really... I don't know what more they could really improve upon him. Being a protocol droid, giving him hinged hips really wouldn't do him any favors because protocol droids don't move like that anyway. It's a very nice paint deco, and he's just a perfect action figure, quite frankly. And like most of the others, he's been in my collection for 17 years now. Like how he can hold his rifle like that. It's pretty accurate for him. And Zuckuss here, I've had him whenever the Saga Legends Shadow of the Dark Side line was making its way around. So I've probably had Zuckuss here ever since 2011, maybe 12, or somewhere between 10, 11, or 12. I forget. I do know I got him for Christmas though. I'm trying to think. I'm gonna guess it was 2011. So he's been around for a while, at least 13 years now. I still have the elastic band around his right hand there. It's starting to yellow a little bit, so I imagine over the years it's probably going to deteriorate even more. But I think he's one of those characters, he might not hold his rifle too well. We'll see. I really like this action figure as well. Again, there's really nothing that Hasbro can improve upon that I can think of. Between him and 4-LOM, I would like to get the Black Series versions of them at some point. Unfortunately, they're actually not that expensive. You can get on Amazon right now and find both of them for usually like $25 or less each, which is not bad. So I'll probably end up jumping on that here soon. And then the only one out of the group that I'd be missing is Bossk. So then, once I get the entire group in Black Series, I'll do a video for them as well. I'll probably bring these guys out again. Yeah, everything about this guy is perfect. A lot of nice detailing in it. I guess if Hasbro could improve one thing, maybe make his comma here a little more. Instead of having it flared out like this, maybe have it a little more subtle, I guess. Something like that. But that's an easy fix. I could probably even do that on my own. It still has that crease there, unfortunately. That was from being pinned inside the package. I think it was like this. And it had a plastic flap over it, and unfortunately it left that dent in there. And even after all these years, it's still there. A lot of times stuff like that ends up going away. Yeah, same on this side. Let me know if you have Zuckuss and have that dent on his comma as well. Hasbro did do some weathering on it. You can see it has some of the stains on it. Of course, some lint here and there. And I think these guys do make a duo. They usually travel together. Would ever think a Protocol Droid and a Gand would end up getting together. With the Gand, you do fight a whole bunch of them in the Knights of the Old Republic 2 video game. And of course, they're all bounty hunters there as well. So I guess Zuckuss was following his heritage. But yeah, just kind of a brief overview, a little history lesson about each of these figures. Most of them have been in my collection for 17 years now at this point. Minus Zuckuss, and who I've had for maybe 12 or 13 now, and then Dengar, who I've had for probably 5 or 6 years at least. Probably display each of these at the very top of my shelf, or one of my shelves for all the action figures. Iconic group, happy to have them all. And I think we're getting pretty close to having definitive versions of all of them. Other than a new Empire Strikes Back Boba Fett, I really don't think any of the other ones need much improvement at all. I know some people would say, oh, you know, IG-88 or Bosk needs new figures, maybe even 4-LOM, maybe even Zuckuss, but I think they're perfect for what they are. But anyways, that concludes this overview for the Empire Strikes Back Bounty Hunters. I hope you enjoyed taking a look at these and a second look at some of them, and getting a little bit of a history on each one. If you haven't already, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. I always appreciate all your support. Check out some links in the description if you haven't done so already. As always, thanks for watching.